Claridge fought back with a vengeance in Georgia, but his lackluster result at Watkins Glen means that Toyka is currently the man leading the points. Both could find themselves vulnerable today with how the Chicago street circuit takes no prisoners. A slip-up might be harsher than just lost positions and instead potentially mean the end of their race. Let's see who survives the Windy City as we get ready to watch round 3 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series. You'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Yadaberry calling today's race, and behind the scenes is our director Joe Peak. He's using cameras provided by the one and only Dougie Beard. If you haven't heard of this track, you could be forgiven. Well, it hasn't really existed in real life yet, but thanks to iRacing scanning technology, it's as real as it gets here in the sim. Let's take a closer look with the GSRC track guide.
Welcome to the Chicago Street Circuit. NASCAR and iRacing teamed up to create a virtual street course made from real-world scan data of the Midwest's most famous city avenues. Sat right in the middle of skyscrapers, monuments, museums, and Lake Michigan, it's perhaps one of the most picturesque tracks on the service. It clocks in at a little over 2 miles in length, which is about 3.5 kilometers, and includes 12 turns dispersed around it. The shape of the track might look simple, but tackling it is anything but. The turn from Lakeshore onto Roosevelt will be a fast and narrow single-file affair that tightens up on the exit. And the arc around Congress Plaza Drive forces drivers to feather the throttle while hugging the inside wall as tightly as they can. Expect most passes to be attempted on the turn into Balbo at either the first corner or turn 6. However, both have zero runoff, which means outbraking yourself will likely end your day prematurely. In general, the bumpy nature of the circuit and the closeness of the punishing walls means that survival is probably going to be the name of the game for most drivers. In the world of sim racing, we have unique opportunities to make our dreams into reality, and iRacing and NASCAR have done just that.
Interesting to find out about this Chicago street circuit a little bit more. Not a very well-known circuit, but here in iRacing, it has been around for a little while, and these Lotus 49 machines have visited this circuit once before, but looking at this track, as you see, a relatively simple street circuit, but don't let that fool you. It is very tricky with a few overcrests, lots of blind entries, and concrete walls that line both the inside and outside of this racetrack. So if you make a little bit of a misstep here, it's easy to get collected with suspension damage at a track like this. The other thing is not very many laps have been turned here by these competitors. We all know about Sebring, Road Atlanta, these world famous circuits. Chicago, definitely not as well known. So we'll see how it provides the racing for us today. Also, leading into the championship here, we have two forms of the championship in the Lotus 49 series. We have what's called the F1 championship, which is the main championship. These are the top guys with the unrestricted I rating, and taking a look at them right now, leading the way here, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, is Teemu Toyka there at the 60 points total. Shortly after him is actually Mick Claridge there in the second place, followed up with Neil Kemp, and then Jorge Nieva and David Rossi in the top 5 positions there in the F1 championship. And then also we've got the Formula 2 championship. The only difference between these two championships is actually the I rating. The F1 has unlimited I rating. Here in the Formula 2, these guys are limited down to, I believe it's 3,000 I rating and below. And here we have Timothy Porter leading the way over Terry Tromhauser. Don Peak, a relatively familiar name here in this series, in the top 3. Andrew Eng there in 4th, and Jan Stefan there in the top 5. And that wraps it up for the championship talk for today's show. And do want to talk a little bit more about the racetrack. We're going to be doing just 12 turns here, and I'm actually looking up how many laps we're going to be doing today. 25 laps, it looks like, on today's track. And like we mentioned, round 3 of 12, 25 laps, open setups for these cars, no spare car. I mentioned those walls. If you come in contact with those walls, there's no fast repair, so you're going to have to come in, get that damage fixed. drive-through penalty at 17x and disqualification for 25x. And I don't think that we'll see those incidence limits come into any sort of play here. I think that if you have an accident at this Chicago street circuit, it really is going to be game over for the day. Now, I know that we've covered the points, we've covered the track out here, and these cars are actually out in qualifying right now. Taking a look at Bill Tyler, just taking a little escape down an access road here, but these are some of the first shots that we're going to get here of this Chicago street circuit. And first thing I notice immediately, it is very, very narrow. You look at how slow speed those apex corners are, and up over this bridge provides definitely a visual difference in how you turn in and how you spot all these braking opportunities. And once again, look at how narrow this racetrack is. It's going to be very interesting to see how these Lotus 49 machines really navigate this place. And dare I say that it kind of reminds me a little bit of an old school street circuit. You know, the old Monacos, where the old Long Beaches, where they really didn't have a lot of room, and maybe it was a little bit slower of a speed with these 90-degree corners and more of a technical challenge to keep the car in one piece than what we see in today's fast and flowing street circuits. So, going to be really curious to see how this racing plays out today. Taking a look at Rolly Wallbank here as he's starting to put some lap times in. Looks like he's able to put it 9th on the board there with that last lap time. Currently slips down to 10th position now provisionally with a 1:27.3, and just like that, you see how easy it is to get caught up, and he hit a tire wall and went end up over end. We do have a couple of live cams today here for everybody. This is one of them, Cam Porter here. He's going to be racing the number 19 machine. Taking a look at where he's currently on track, and he's in provisional spot number 12 currently, as qualifying just has about 4 minutes left in it. And I really enjoy watching these onboard cameras. You see the immense amount of concentration and sometimes frustration in the competitors when the race is happening, but more oftentimes than not, smiling. And that's what we always like to see, whether it's real racing or here in the sim. Also, take a look at that. Just saw a purple fastest lap pop up. Sebastian Tixier, provisional pole, and before you know it, I can't even get his name out before Mick Claridge comes in and swoops that away. Another very familiar name, Mick Claridge, currently provisional pole with a 1:23.9, over half a second faster than the rest of the field. This is Jorge Nieva on screen right now. Jorge is yet to put down a lap time, and checking to kind of see where he's at on screen. Looks like he's currently in Sector 3, tracking right on top of his current fastest lap here. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Sector 1 here. Get a good onboard shot of really just kind of the flow of this Chicago street circuit. And not gonna lie, everybody, I'm still learning it myself over here, but it's got nice visual cues. We see these big, you know, cardboard signs is really what I think they are, but they're brake markers on the side of the fence. So good visual cues for these drivers to identify which corner they're coming up to. And it looks like the apex curbs were also marked either with some black tires or yellow tires. So hopefully these drivers are able to navigate this racetrack with familiarity out there, because that's what it counts in terms of the racing and how you get around the racetrack when there's more than one car out there with you. Still riding on board here. This is Jorge coming out through what I believe now is Sector 3. Yeah, he's coming to Barney over start-finish line. We're going to see 1:24.8. That's going to slip him up into the top 5. That is a great lap from the number 11 machine out there. Now we're going to be looking at Steve Morris back here, currently 21st on the grid. Got about a minute and a half left, and these cars are doing just under a minute and 25 seconds in terms of their fast lap. So these guys can finish the lap that they're on, but if anybody starts a lap right now, doesn't look like they're going to have any time to end it. And I think that is everybody. The only car that we still have out there looks to be Don Peak, who's just finishing up right now, and that is going to lead us in to our qualifying starting grid for today's race. I know that some cars are still just sort of wrapping up out there, but here we've got our grid. Mick Claridge leading the way, another pole position for that familiar name out front. Sebastian Tixier joining him on that front row. Benjamin Soko there in the third position. Neil Kemp in fourth. Jorge Nieva slipping in with that top 5 spot there at the end. John Olsen in 6th place. Gary Ho 7th. Bill Tyler in 8th. Laust Olsen, another one of our cameras tonight. I'm sure we're going to be getting some good shots of him there, starting in the top 10 in 9th place. Xavier Sanchez in 10th. David Rossi in 11th. Timu Toika, Jeff Sanders, Johnny Lemon, Glenn Becker, Michael Grissinger, Robert Plumley there in the 12th position. Cam Porter, who we're riding along with earlier, in the 18th spot. Rolly Wallbank, and Robert Pongrazi rounding out the top 20. Steve Morris in 21st, Michael Saunders, Jan Steffen, Douglas Nelson, and then we have Don Peak and Timothy Porter there rounding out that entire, what looks to be 26 cars that are going to be taking the grid here at this Chicago street circuit for the Lotus 49 series. Now, for all of you that haven't watched one of these races, this is a standing start. All of the competitors are currently waiting to pre-grid right now. We see some of them start to appear on pre-grid. Some of them are waiting a little bit longer, maybe making sure they've got their race setups in. And let me tell you, that's something that I've done plenty of times. As you go out there, you qualify, everything's all good. You get focused, and then you forget to load your race setup, and you only have like 2 laps of fuel out there. So it's good to see these guys taking their little bit of time, making sure they have everything referenced, everything sorted out for their cars. And before you know it, we're going to have all of them joining up here on the grid, and we'll have the revs come up, the lights will come on, and then when the lights go out, that's when we get our green flag action here to start the race. Like I said, 25 laps here at the Chicago street circuit, and taking a look at this weather real quick, looks like it's actually a pretty warm day. 86 degrees Fahrenheit ambient, 119 degrees track temperature. We're really going to have to keep an eye on that. That means these cars are going to be struggling quite a bit with the grip out there, and looks like we're just waiting for a few more drivers to finally take this grid. I gotta say, these Lotus 49 machines lined up like this look fantastic out there. And looks like we got just about 10 seconds left for everybody to join up. We're gonna wait for just a few out, and lights are out, revs are on, and we've got a green flag here with these Lotus 49s. A great start really from the front row. Mick Claridge and Sebastian Tixier get away very clean, a little bit busy further back. 3 wide through turns 1 there. These cars finally now approaching turn 2. 2 wide here for 3rd place between Soko and Neil Kemp there, and then further back it is just messy. Looks like we got 1 car around. That might have been Gary Ho that got turned around, and looking like they're losing a little bit of positions back there. Can't pick out who that is. Looks like Michael Saunders also having some issues, and Neil Kemp now losing some spots going through turn 3 and turn 4. And wow, looks like the front 5 got away clean, but everything back behind that is one big scrum of a mess. And here at this street circuit, there is no place to hide. If you get caught up in that pack, I think it really negatively affects your lap time. And here you're already seeing these front cars just kind of slip away from the rest of the competitors, and might not seem like that big of a deal right now, but come lap 4, lap 5, when you can't even see them because they're 3 or 4 turns up the road, it's never a good feeling when you've got that huge mountain to climb. I mentioned these point of view cameras that we have, the in-car cameras. This is Laust Olsen, currently in the 9th place. Laust is one of our regular competitors here in multiple series, and wheeling that familiar red steering wheel of the Lotus 49 machine here today. trying to make his way up. That is Gary Ho in front of him and Bill Tyler just in front of that. But really good battle for really what is kind of 6th, 7th, and 8th place on the racetrack. And one thing to also look at is right behind Laust is Teemu Toika. We mentioned him in the intro when Teemu's actually got a really good run, and oh no, looks like he actually gets out into the outside wall right there. Gonna see if that's just a little bit of netcode damage or if he picked up any sort of car damage, suspension damage. I mentioned that because it's only lap 2 of 25. If you deal with that damage now, you're gonna have to deal with it all race. It's never fun, but looks like Toika has a little bit of issues getting the throttle down coming out of that corner, but for the most part, has it all up and running here. We're going to go back and take a look at some of these replays that we've had from action earlier in the race. Start with the first one here on the initial race start. Thanks to our director, Joe Peak here. This is the number 15 machine. This is Michael Grissinger, that green machine. He was the one who ultimately got turned around. This looks to be number 2, turn 2, and just gets some help from behind there. Turns around, oh no, just trying to get out of the way. Unfortunately, the 25 car also got caught up in that one, and I think, no, Mick Claridge is just having some connection issues, and then Teemu Toika, oh no! This is Toika that got turned around there. This is no good for the points championship leader. That is not good, and I'm actually seeing Teemu is still out there on the racetrack, but having some connection issues. I gotta wonder. Oh no, and he looks like, yeah, he just lost it on the apex coming around. One of the things that's really tricky about these cars, very tricky on the throttle with these old tires, these big engines back there, and it's so easy to spin up the rear wheels and not necessarily wheel spin, but just getting on the gas too soon, and you get that loose condition, and when the car gets too yawed out, too sideways, you just can't save it from there. Now, looks like we're looking back at Jorge Nieva right here. This is 4th place, chasing down Benjamin Zocco there in the number 7 machine. He's in the lighter blue car, focusing on Jorge Nieva in this darker blue and orange machine behind him. This is the battle for 3rd place on the racetrack, and these two have kind of separated themselves a little bit from our lead pack. They're running about 4 seconds off of our 2nd place, Sebastian Tixier. But I gotta think that Jorge Nieva might have a little bit more pace than Ben Zocco right now. Looking at their qualifying positions, Jorge Nieva's moved up 1 spot. Benjamin Zocco is holding station right there in the 3rd place, so they both have plenty of raw pace in these cars, but I think Nieva might just have a little bit of a better race car, and he's trying to find his way around Benjamin Zocco. And with this Chicago street circuit, we've seen plenty of incidents earlier, but it really was narrowing down. Things were funneling, cars were too wide, and trying to figure out their space on the racetrack. Now we have an actual battle here. Nieva is applying pressure to Zocco, and he's got to figure out, where can I get this run? Where can I have an advantage over this number 7 car that I can possibly make a move on the brakes without getting into the wall myself? Because we got to remember, one little step over the limit and you're not finding yourself in a runoff area. You're finding yourself into one of these concrete walls that Teemu Toika did earlier, and ultimately what I think probably got car damage, then he suffered from it later in the race. This does look to be the closest battle that we've got on the racetrack right now. Still hounding the back of Ben Zocco. And looking back, I also want to point out Neil Kemp right now. Looking at the back of Laust Olsen, that battle hasn't gone anywhere either. I know that Laust always gets some good pressure from behind him, and whenever Laust gets some good pressure, he always provides us some great entertainment here on these GSRC channel with his cameras. But look at that. I don't think we're seeing the Laust pucker factor yet. I think we're just seeing Laust cool as a cucumber out there, kind of working lap 5, getting into the meat and potatoes of this race, just sorting things out. But It's not Timu Toika behind him anymore. It's now David Rossi, then the number 13 machine that is behind Laust Olsen. And you got to think, is Laust maybe holding up the competitors behind him? I don't think so. He's always got great pace out there, but I don't see him moving up and challenging Gary Ho at all for that position. I think he's just kind of finding his rhythm out there, and I think that David Rossi might have a little bit more pace than that Laust Olsen machine. Looking back, another one of our familiar runners, Xavier Sanchez, looks to have a disconnect, and we've got a replay here. Going to be taking a look back here. This is this replay. Xavier Sanchez in the number 4 machine. He's the lead car, the white car, the lead on the screen, going into the brake zone. Heavy on the brakes here. Oh, no. Just into the corner, too deep. You saw it lock up. He was standing on the brake pedal and just couldn't get the car stopped. Unfortunately, made contact with outside wall. You saw the suspension break, and that is day done for one of our championship regulars, Xavier Sanchez. Nothing has changed out front. Mick Claridge, man, oh man, he continues to dominate this race, and it's a little bit of kind of the races of the past. He's come out with his hair on fire this season, and I want to say he's 3 for 3 in pole positions. He's been up front in all of these races. He hasn't been able to close all of them. Watkins Glen was especially messy, but looks like he's in pretty good command here of this one, and I gotta think, rocking a near 2.5-second lead over his closest competitor, Sebastian Tixier. You don't even look in the mirror. It's one of these points where you turn them off. You just completely turn them off, focus on your own stuff. And here is second place runner Sebastian Tixier, and no slouch of his own. These two are the only 2 cars running currently in the 1-minute 24-second lap times. Everyone else in the field is running 125s and slower. So you really are looking at the class of the field between the 2 front runners, Mick Claridge and Sebastian Tixier out there. And I mentioned Mick has about a 3-second gap over second place, but Sebastian Tixier has pulled out 6 seconds over Benjamin Zocco there in the 3rd place. This is Ben in the number 7 machine, that light blue cigar-shaped car. Kind of is a cigar-shaped car. And interesting to look at how these cars have kind of changed shapes. And we're going to take a look at another replay here. Not sure which car this is. This looks to be, I believe, the number 9 here. Gary Ho, mentioned him kind of battling in the top 10 earlier through this fast sweeper coming up to this brake zone, and wonder if we're going to see just in too deep a little bit again. And certainly, ooh, very close call for the cars behind him with that bounce back from the tire barrier. But that's the second car we've seen just misjudge a brake zone a little bit too much, and I mentioned it a couple times. He overstepped the limit just slightly here at a street circuit, and there's no runoff. There's no escape road, really. You're into a wall, and unfortunately that oftentimes means day done. I do see Gary Ho still out there on the racetrack. Oh no, unfortunately he is in pit road now, so probably going to be day done. This is jumping back up. This is still continuing to be a fantastic battle for what is the 3rd position on the racetrack. We've mentioned these names several times. It is the number 7 machine leading the number 11 machine. Hey, 7-11 out there, always a good combo. And then we've got John Olsen in the number 3. That's the 3rd car in line there. We haven't mentioned John much on the broadcast in terms of his name yet, but hanging out right there in the top 5, and he's in a great position because he's just watching Jorge Nieva attack Benjamin Zocco, and I like that from a driving perspective because I mention my notepad all the time. Everybody's always figuring out how to get faster. Well, take out your pen, start jotting down these notes. Where is he attacking the car that's in front? Where is he gaining his speed there? And then I also want to just take these notes, remember them, and apply them to later. The other thing is, I often consider that John Olsen is kind of sitting at the buffet table, because if Jorge and Ben start racing and get collected, John is just a little bit far enough back that he can just kind of swoop right in and pass them all. And if we remember, John Olsen has lots of pace there in that number 3 machine. At the Road Atlanta race, he was one of our front runners. He led the majority of the beginning part of that race. And I actually think right now, looking at his last few lap times, he's got a little bit of pace on these 2 cars in front of him. I mentioned he was at the buffet table kind of waiting for the pieces, but looks like he's kind of crawled himself up to a spot at the table, and now he's got his fork and knife out and wants to eat with these boys and get up in this battle for what is the final podium spot that Ben Zocco in that light blue number 7 machine is hanging on to. A little bit of lockup from these cars, and I gotta say, that's a scary place to have a lockup because it's one of the very few change of direction S sections here at this racetrack. Lots of 90-degree corners, but when you have a lockup on one side of the car and you're trying to turn it back the other and you're trying to regain that traction, it can be very, very tricky and a very difficult thing for just the race car to do out there. And looks like this battle is a little bit stagnant right now, and I actually want to jump back to a couple more names that we haven't mentioned. Battle for 12th place, Rolly Wallbank and Glenn Becker right now. These 2 competitors are relatively close on the racetrack, and Rolly has had a great race. He started 19th place. He's up 7 positions right now, up into 12th. He's trying to chase down Yanni Lehman up in front of him, but unfortunately has about 8.5 seconds up the road. He's got to deal with Glenn Becker, who's currently hounding him right now. Right behind him, Glenn is in that red machine that we see second in frame on the screen, but both of these cars have moved up from their starting position and having a really good run here at this Chicago street circuit so far. Another couple of cars a little bit further up, just the battle for 10th place right in front of him. I mentioned Yanni Lehman there in the 11th spot, currently applying pressure to Jeff Saunders in front of him. Another couple names that we haven't mentioned. These 2 are a little bit further back, but this is the battle for 10th place, and actually looks like Jeff Saunders is getting by a lap car as well as Yanni right there, both moving by a lap car, getting by him relatively easily out there. And always good to see battles throughout the entire field, you know, not just up front, because really Mick Claridge is continuing to just smoke this field right now. He is up over 5.5 seconds on Sebastian Tixier, and you know, I don't want to give Mick too big of a head out there, but this is more likes of what we see out of Andy T when he comes and races some of the races that Andy comes and races, where it's just complete domination out there. And Mick Claridge right now from pole position, 5.5 seconds out front, just seems to be in a league of his own. His last lap time, 1:24.5. Compare that to second place, 1:26.3. Doesn't look like Sebastian had a very good lap time that last time, but that was nearly 2 seconds that Mick put on that battle there. And yes, let's hop back to 16th place here. This is Don Peak. Always great to see Don out here in this number 23 car, a familiar yellow and blue scheme, paying homage to what is going on in the world today, what I gotta think and believe, and always great to see that. And Don is one of the regulars here in these Lotus 49 cars, and just doing laps out there. Looks like he started all the way in the back. 25th place, is up 9 positions all the way into the 16th spot, just turning consistent laps out there. I've noticed his best lap and his last lap are less than 1/10 of a second apart. Not quite as fast as the lap times that Mick Claridge is turning out there, but consistency is the name of the game when it comes to racing. And trust me, anything can happen in racing. It doesn't matter if it's lap 12 that we're working right now or lap 25. Anything can and will happen in racing. This is the number 2 machine, Mick Claridge out in front. He is about halfway through the race right now. I mentioned that because this is an important part. You're 12 laps down, coming to Barney here, lap 13 now, officially past halfway. Do you have this pace for the entire race, or is this just a sprint race for you? Mick has traditionally shown that he's very good throughout the entire race, but one thing that Mick always has is a very loose race car. And here's a battle for P4 right now. We've got a side-by-side race into turn 1. Looks like John Olsen and Jorge Nieva here are still battling it out. Ben Zocco has kind of danced away a little bit from these two, and John Olsen is now starting to apply that pressure to the back of that blue and orange, that red-orange racing stripe machine of Jorge Nieva. We're going to take a look at the replay of what started this battle, because if we remember, this was 3 cars. There's Ben Zocco out front there, and here is John Olsen taking a look down the inside, and we're going to look just a couple more corners here. Take a look to see if there was any sort of mistake. This is on board with John Olsen. This is your 5th place runner. Going to be coming out onto the main straightaway. And yeah, sure enough, look at that. Nieva got a very poor exit out of the last corner. Really opened the door. He left the door open for John Olsen. Both of these competitors being extremely respectful, leaving each other room. You gotta love to see that. They know they're battling for what is one of these top spots, and the last thing you want to do is take out a competitor when you're having a great race. You know, it's always better to be smiling than crying in the fence. And you know, you can always talk about it with drinks afterwards, but it's better to celebrate it with drinks afterwards than drink away your sorrows after the race. And it looks like I mentioned that this battle between John and Jorge actually had distanced itself out from Ben. But look at that, just a lap or so in clean air, and they have already caught back up to the back of the number 7 machine of Benjamin Zocco. And we're going to jump back to 12th place here. This is Rolly Wallbank. Glenn Becker still applying the pressure here to the back of Rolly's car, thing down into turn 1. This is a corner that I can identify because Barney is standing out there in the middle of the front straightaway. Always easy to find that one. Turn 2 is next because they're easy 90-degree turns to identify here at the Chicago Street Circuit. But this is a really cool camera. Really provides you this historic factor looking out the back of Rolly Wallbank's car. You got the vintage helmet, the vintage goggles. You see the suspension in the background, these old mirrors, and you see that axle turning on the stream here. It's just such a really neat shot, and we really don't get this anymore in modern cars. We really have all these aerodynamics sucking the cars down to the ground, and we don't have all of this movement that we see out of these old vintage cars. And something else that was really cool out of these cars is the shape of the body. I mentioned that because when the cars get going pretty fast, they don't have those aerodynamic aids I just mentioned. They actually produce a little bit of lift, which makes them very sketchy to deal with out there. And I don't think they're dealing with it too much here at this racetrack, but it just shows the level of grip that these race cars have. It's not very much out there, so these competitors like Glenn Becker and Rolly Wallbank, in the middle of this battle, they have to be very careful, especially working lap 15 when you have very old tires. You got to be remembering how much the car has been changing over the course of this run. And actually looks like Rolly Wallbank is going to have to deal with a slower lapped car. Pulls out off to the side and around they go, no problems at all. And I mentioned the sportsmanship here in this series. That's just another great example of what's going on out there. And I know that we've been watching Rolly and Glenn here, but a name that I'm seeing approach this battle, and he's right there in that blue machine in frame, Teemu Toika. This is our championship leader, everybody, and he is not having a good race. He finds himself currently in the 14th position. He did not have a very good qualifying start. Started himself in 12th, all the way down to 15th, but he's found a little bit of a rhythm right now, and I like that we're riding on board with him because he definitely has pace over the two cars in front of him, and that is Glenn Becker and Rolly Wallbank that we've just been talking about for the last couple laps here. Now, riding along with Teemu, it'll be interesting to see where he catches and applies the pressure to the number 17 machine in front of him. I always say that catching a car and passing a car are two very, very different things, and I think that's more than ever apparent here at the Chicago street circuit because you can't overstep the limit. You can't be poking your nose down into these brake zones and filling a competitor's mirror because it really negatively affects you on the corner exit and also your rolling speed through these very short corners. So I think that's what we're seeing. It's not necessarily a DRS train, but it's more of a rhythm train where you just can't find your own rhythm out there because somebody's kind of already in the middle of the funnel that's blocking your way. But one thing's for sure, I think that Teemu Toika right now is finding a way to apply that pressure to Glenn Becker because I think this is the closest battle we have on our racetrack right now. And ultimately, it's the battle for 12th place. Teemu Toika currently 14th, Glenn Becker 13th, Rolly Wallbank 12th place out there on the racetrack. And the laps are starting to dwindle down as well. And interesting to see the ebb and flow of these three competitors because Teemu looked to be applying the pressure to Glenn, but now Glenn definitely has the pace and is tucked up under the exhaust pipes of Rolly. But look at this, Teemu with a great run out onto the front straightaway. He's going to take a look down the inside of Glenn Becker, laid on the brakes, squirrels it all the way down there, squirming on the brakes, but he is going to get that pass done. Teemu Toika up to 13th place. That's one more car off of the list. The next up, Rolly Wallbank in the number 18 machine. You saw Rolly applying the throttle, squeezing those rear tires, and Teemu really deep on the brakes. Huge lockup. Fortunately, gets it stopped before getting into the back of Rolly there. That was a very close call, and I think that's just an example of the pace difference. And here we're going to get a replay of exactly that. Teemu here gets a very good run coming out onto the back straightaway. He's tucked up into the draft, not close enough to make a move into the brake zone. Oh gosh, look at how close that was. And thankfully Teemu got stopped. Oh no, Teemu's around. Teemu just had a spin. He backs it into the wall all by himself. He just lost it in one of these sweeping sections of the racetrack and does a 360, backs it into the wall. I don't see too much damage on the car right now. Maybe one of those exhaust pipes a little bit bent up. This is the replay of what just happened. Watch the blue car, the middle car in frame, coming around this corner. And gosh, I don't know. I think I saw the car bounce going into the corner. I don't know if there was some sort of weird bump going in, or maybe Teemu lost it on a downshift. It's very possible. These cars do use 3 pedals here. Let's take a listen and watch. Could have been a little bit of a downshift there. Could have been a little bit of a rev mismatch. And let me tell you, it can lock a rear diff, and when you lock that rear diff, you got no more traction there out of the corner. And I'm still riding along board with Teemu right now. He has got his hands full. He is just dealing with this race car and jumping back up. This is the battle for 6th place. Look at this. Neil Kemp right now all over the back of Bill Tyler going into turn 1 where we just saw that move made earlier. Still single file, but this is that opportunity. Turn 2, got to capitalize on the exit here. We'll see if Bill Tyler, yeah, Bill gets a really good run. Stays at an arm's length distance away from Neil Kemp in the number 10 machine here. This is the second car in frame, Neil. Into that tricky sweeping brake zone. And something that I'm noticing here between these two cars, Neil definitely more aggressive going into the corner, carries the speed going in, but Bill Tyler definitely faster coming out of the corner from the middle off. And although I take back my words, Bill Tyler just missed that exit, as it looks like they're going to be going around a lapped car here, get by them nice and clean into this area that Teemu Toika just had a spin right here in this right-hander, so tricky. And yeah, there are lots of bumps here. I'm picking up all of these little cues as this race goes on. Working 6 laps to go here, just to let everybody know, nothing has changed up front. It's still the Mick Claridge show to 12 seconds over Sebastian Tixier. We're not missing anything going on up front right now. Bill Tyler right now in the 6th place over Neil Kemp, but here's an opportunity for Neil Kemp. Gets a great run out of the final turn, up under start finish. We're going to see if he dives down. No, he chooses to stay in line behind Bill Kemp again, and Bill with another poor exit out of turn 1. You got to think the over-under has got to be coming at some point, but no. Neil Kemp's going to try the long way around turn 2. What a battle here for the 6th place position. Neil Kemp has half a car over Bill Tyler, but they're going to take it side by side into this short break zone. This could be disaster right here, but Bill Tyler thankfully backs out of it wisely. Neil Kemp into the 6th place position, and let me explain that for everybody. That is a very narrow section of the racetrack, and it requires both competitors to leave room for everybody, and they both did just that. As we're getting the replay here, you're going to see it squeeze down to the right. Both Bill and Neil leave room for each other. Going into this sweeping right-hander, you see how close it gets there, but both of them make it through the corner together, and once again, great racing here that we're seeing out of these Lotus 49 machines. That means Neil Kemp is now in your 6th place. Bill Tyler currently in 7th, and immediately I'm seeing Neil jump out just a little bit. Not much. He's only a half second in front of Bill, but each corner exit, he seems to just get a little bit of a better drive off than Bill, and that's just enough to keep him at that arm's length distance. Like I said, working lap 5 right now. Or I'm sorry, not lap 5, but 5 to go in the race. We have done 20 laps so far. Mick Claridge still leading the way, 12.5 seconds over Sebastian Tixier in 2nd place. Benjamin Zocco still hanging on to that final podium spot in the 3rd position in the familiar number 7 machine. This is your leader on screen, that number 2 red car of Mick Claridge. I don't blame us. We haven't really highlighted Mick a whole lot because, honestly, it's been a little bit of a boring race for Mick. He had a little bit of excitement for the first couple laps, but ever since then, he's just been by himself out there, kind of in the rhythm of things, and just been putting on a clinic. I mentioned the lap times earlier in the race, and he has not strayed from those 124s at all. And here we've got another familiar battle. It's Teemu Toika has gotten back up on the horse, finds himself in the saddle again, applying pressure to Rolly Wallbank. This was one of the cars that he has actually got up to the back of, but didn't get by earlier. And let me tell you, Teemu has had a day here in this Lotus 49 car. I think he's had 2 spins. The guys will have to correct me wrong, maybe 3. He's been in the wall for sure once. He's been sideways pretty much every single corner of the 21 laps so far that we've seen here. I think that Teemu's probably going to get out of this sim rig sweating after this one. Probably pretty frustrated, but when you're leading the championship, this is exactly what you need to do. You cannot give up. You have to keep going, and here he gets a really good run out of the final corner. Gonna go under Barney the flagman, taking a look into turn 1 underneath Rolly. Doesn't go down there this time, not close enough to make that opportunity stick. Gonna take a look down into turn 2 here. He's really trying to maximize these corners here, trying to get the exit, and looks like he's able to carry the speed, but every time he gets on the throttle, he just can't get the traction to get the power down. And here's a late braking move from Teemu. What a fantastic move. And oh no, he's in the wall again. just a little bit too much apex speed, and I think that is going to be day done for Teemu Toika. Just stick a knife in him. I think that is going to finally be the dead cow of Teemu Toika out there on the racetrack. And unfortunate, because Teemu is just having such a frustrating race and working his way back up. Unfortunate to see it end that way. Jumping back up to the third place, this is Ben Zocco, Jorge Nieva, and John Olsen. It's kind of funny because this battle is kind of stretched out, closed up a few times, but here it is, working 3 laps to go, and we have a race on our hands for the final podium spot. Ben Zocco leads the way in that light blue number 7 machine. Then we have Jorge Nieva in the dark blue with the orange racing stripe, and then John Olsen here in this more of a kind of, I guess it's another darker blue with white. And then also got a Colorado flag on that car is what I'm seeing from our director. Always good to see that out there. And this is going to be interesting now, working only 2 laps to go as they come underneath Barney the Flagman. So the time is running out for these competitors to start to make that move. And looking at them all, they're all about a half second away from each other in terms of track position. I think it's going to require a little bit of a misstep, maybe a little bit too much speed going into a braking zone, a little bit of a lockup, and all of a sudden these 3 cars will definitely be closed in, and all of a sudden a passing opportunity will definitely appear for these cars out here. And nobody wants to give up a final podium spot on these last couple of turns, let alone the last lap. So I'm sure that Ben Zocco is going to have his elbows out up there, but really Ben has run a fantastic race. I'm looking at his consistency. His last lap time and his best lap time less than 0.2 of a second apart from each other. And so he has kind of been that immovable rock out there. No matter how much pressure you apply to that number 7 machine, he just always seems to hit his marks, be consistent on these corner exits, and that's what matters when it comes to racing. I know that Mick Claridge has officially taken the white flag. He's working down the front straightaway here. We'll keep an eye on this 3rd place battle. I've got my eye on the leader as well, as this 3rd place battle goes underneath, gets the white flag from Barney the Flagman here. That's still Nieva following Zocco there for the 3rd place position. Coming out into this crucial corner, coming out onto one of the straightaways. Doesn't look like he's going to be close enough once again, but this leads into that really tricky sweeping brake zone. We'll see if any of them have a misstep. No, looks like all of the competitors get through, and let's go ahead and jump up to our leader. This is Mick Claridge. Oh no, he's going to deal with a lapped car spinning around in front of him. That is terrible. That is a nightmare to see if you're Mick Claridge, but thankfully he's got a 12+ second lead and able to navigate that with no issues at all. Comes around the second to last turn, one more corner, and he's gonna see the checkered flag being held by Barney the Flagman. This is the number 2 machine. Mick Claridge taking home the win here at the Chicago Street Circuit in the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legend Series. What a race from Mick Claridge, and got enough time here to see Sebastian Tixier come around the final corner. This is your 2nd place runner in the number 1 machine coming home across the line, and here's the battle for 3rd. Benjamin hangs on to the final podium spot over Jorge and John Olsen out there. And I know that we have maybe a couple more battles here that are finishing up. Looks like all of these cars, as well as Mick Claridge, is starting to celebrate down here. He already did some donuts, and here's Laust Olsen leading the way over Jeff Saunders. All of these cars have kind of spread themselves out a little bit as the rest of the field comes across the start-finish line. We see more tire smoke, celebratory burnouts, and donuts, and that is going to do it here from the race. We're going to have a quick break and be right back with our finishing results. You just witnessed domination from Mick Claridge, the number 2 machine. Although I can't say that I'm surprised out there. He has been 3 for 3 with poles this season and now takes home that checkered flag again here at this Chicago street circuit in the Lotus 49 machine. These are your official race results. As you see, Mick Claridge 14 plus seconds over Sebastian Tixier. Started second, finished second. Good run there for that number 1 machine. Ben Zocco had pressure behind him all afternoon, but ultimately ends up in that final podium spot in the 3rd place. Jorge Nieva, the 4th position. John Olsen rounding out that great 3-car battle inside the top 5. Neil Kemp with that amazing pass around Bill Tyler there late in the race. Finishes in the 6th. Bill Tyler 7th. David Rossi 8th. Laust Olsen provided some great shots in the 9th position. And Jeff Saunders coming home in the top 10. Yanni Lehman there in the 11th spot, followed by Rolly Wallbank and Glenn Becker in the 13th position. Also had that great battle. Michael Grissinger 14th. Don Peak ending up in the 15th spot. Looks like all of these cars finished a little bit further a lap down. Jan Steffen 16th. Douglas Nelson 17th. Steve Morris. Timu Toika. So unfortunate to see him down there in the 19th spot after such a rough day for him. And then all of these cars further down, Robert Plumley, Gary Ho, Xavier Sanchez, Cam Porter, Robert Pongrazzi, Michael Saunders, and Tim Porter. They all had issues earlier on and retired from the race before lap 10. Looking at our interviews here, we already have Mick Claridge, the man with his hair on fire. Mick, congratulations. Pole, fast lap, and the race win. What a job out there.
Hold on, man. Hold on. Let me put that fire out. Yeah, cheers, Joey. Nice one. Yeah, I really enjoyed the track. It was just one of those weeks where I put a setup in the car and it worked, and every little change I made worked even more. So it was just a good week. That's all it is, really.
It certainly seemed like a good week out there, Mick. And one thing that I was noticing about this circuit, it seems to be like a true vintage historic circuit. Very, very blind, a little bit of a slower speed circuit. And it seems like these Lotus 49 machines really are at home here. Did you feel like this was a good combo for the car and track?
Well, yeah. I mean, the community is totally split on that thing. It seems that everyone hates it except me and John Olsen. But listen, I love the place. I think it's a brilliant track. I really enjoyed it. Like I say, it's been a good week. So I was looking forward to it. I know when we raced here before, I had good races through the week. Couple of scary moments today. I was actually driving and thinking to myself, I haven't had a scare this race yet. And then as soon as I said it to myself, yeah, the next corner I understeered nearly at the wall. So yeah, it is one of those tracks. But yeah, I love it, and I think it really does fit the 49 well.
Well, and yes, to put the shoe on the other foot, I know that it's not one of these modern street circuits where we see more passing opportunities, but in my opinion, you go back and you look at vintage races of these cars, and I think this is more familiar with what you would see out of the correct time period than what we see out of the current stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I always really appreciate with the iRacing physics is it seems to really show how good it is when you're on a bumpy track. So something like Summit Point or whatever, or obviously today, when you're trying to get this 49 over these bumps on the track, it really does show how good iRacing is, I think, anyway. And yeah, it's just a war of trying to get the power down, basically. And yeah, I just love it. I really do love it.
We saw that a few times out here between competitors today. And last thing that I got to ask you, Mick, before we let you go, you mentioned you had a couple moments and we missed that understeer, but we did catch the very last lap, the last few corners. Take us through when you were behind those two lap cars and you saw that spin happen in front of you.
Yeah, do you know what? I just thought I got such a gap between me and Seb. I just thought I don't want to get involved in their battle because obviously they were fighting. So I just thought I'd hang back, and it was exactly at that moment I just hung back a little bit more, and just let them head off a bit. And yeah, I mean, yeah, a little bit nervy, but yeah, not too bad. I mean, you do so many laps during the week. You know yourself, Joey. You do so many laps in this car or whatever cars you're driving on the iRacing service, and you just get used to seeing what crashes and you sort of know what's going to happen. So yeah, it wasn't a bad one for me to see, and I knew Glenn would sort of control it afterwards, even though he was running straight down the track. But yeah, not too much of a problem there.
Well, once again, Mick, congratulations on the sweep here at the Chicago Street Circuit, and we look forward to seeing you at the next race in Sandown here in just a week's time.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Not even run the track yet. Don't even know it. Just bought it. So yeah, but a lot of guys are raving about it. So yeah, looking forward to it. And yeah, just something to say. Happy New Year to everyone watching, and you guys. Thanks a lot.
That was our race winner, Mick Claridge, the man with his hair on fire out there. And looks like next up we have our second place finisher, Sebastian Tixier, now joining us here in the booth. Sebastian, congratulations on the second place finish out there.
Thank you. I didn't had a good quali, but when I saw that I was P2, I was very happy because last season I was driving just to win races, and this season obviously the logic next step is to think about the championships. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay behind Mick because that's not the track I want to battle with Mick, even if I had the pace or not. I don't know. I did not even try. I was just looking behind.
Well, Mick was definitely fast out there, and we'll get to him a little bit later, but you mentioned the championship and you're still having fun out here and joining it. But with this second place finish, I was looking, it looks like you were roughly about 9th coming in points, but this second place is definitely going to jump you up. Is this maybe the motivation that you need to take the championship maybe a little bit more seriously this season?
I was taking it seriously from the beginning. Actually, my results looks bad, but if you look at the results of all the other fast guys like John, Mick, Ove, Timu, what's the name again? Sorry, all the Spanish guy at Watkin and Road Atlanta, they didn't finish that well. So actually, with the drop weeks, I think I'm good in the championships right now.
Yeah, and as I say that, the points championship is getting updated as we speak. Looks like you're jumping up to the 6th place position right now and very close inside the top 5. So that should be plenty of a carrot out there for you to chase and start working your way up. And last thing I want to mention, because you brought up Mick and you were chasing him down all race. Where was he so fast? Where were you losing the lap time? What did you need out of the car to go up and take that fight to the leader?
I think I don't have the same view on that because in the practice session just before I was actually faster than him. Like I said, I was not pushing at all. I was just looking behind, stay away from the wall, being very conservative. P2 is okay. I know Mick is not going to do the World Championship, so I didn't push at all.
Yeah, that's great insight from you. Thank you so much for letting us know that. And we're definitely going to have to keep an eye on you in these future rounds here, especially heading into Sandown next. And before I let you go, is there anybody that you want to say hi to?
Well, Happy New Year, everybody, especially Aussies. It's already next year for them. For me, it's in 1 hour and a half. Thanks for the broadcast. It's very nice to have a broadcast even on this day. And thanks to the community and Togo for the Togo and Topi for the setup.
Awesome. Well, that was your second place qualifier, second place finisher, Sebastian Tixier in that number 1 machine. And it looks like we do have our final podium finisher, Benjamin Zoko, here joining us in the booth. Congratulations on your 3rd place finish today.
Thank you very much. It was a very stressful race.
Yes, we noticed that, Ben. We saw that you had your mirrors foiled the entire race from when the green flag dropped to when the checkered flag flew. Looks like you didn't have any time to breathe out there.
No, none whatsoever. I know that I had some fast guys around me, and for whatever reason, I guess the Red Bull that I had to to keep me awake earlier, and the adrenaline from the qualifying session, it kind of wore off on the starting grid, and I started to get really quite tired the first couple laps, so it was hard to keep the concentration going. But I knew that if well, I seemed to have the pace over John and Jorge, um, and it's a hard track to pass out unless unless someone makes a mistake or the person's a bit quicker. Or especially under brakes, there's a couple of spots you can pass, so there is some passing to be done here. But I knew that if I was just consistent and safe, then I'd be able to hold on to the podium. In an earlier race, I brushed up against the wall there. I don't know what turn it is, must be 3 or 4, some of the double right-hander. And did some damage to the suspension, which made the car a bit difficult to drive. And I was purposely going cautious through there the whole race, but then I managed to do the exact same thing. What about 5 laps to go? So that made me really nervous, which let the gap close down to the last few laps, and started to get a few drops of sweat on the brow last couple laps. But again, just hit your marks, keep it off the walls, and get that podium.
One thing that I definitely noticed out there in the race was your consistency, and you seem to have really from the middle of the corner to the exit nailed. And that's what really held on to that position for you throughout the entire battles that you saw all race today. And talk me through that. Did you do any practice races leading up into that, and that's when you knew you had to be consistent, or was it just a lot of practice and laps around this circuit?
Not too much practice for me. I usually just do 30 minutes sort of warm up, and I do a race. There's a race 23:30 GMT Friday, which is 10:30 in the morning Saturday here for me. So I do that one every week. That's my practice race, and then if I can, I'll do this race. And I usually get a little bit faster from the experience gained from that earlier race, which was sort of the case here. And I did pick up a little tactic, which was just sort of aiming for those inside walls on the apexes, and really focusing on those exits. So trying to sort of aiming to hit the wall, but miss it, and sort of apex behind the concrete. That was the trick to getting some really consistent lap times. It was almost frustratingly consistent because I knew I wanted to pull a bit of a gap, and I know I had to push like qualifying to do it. But every lap was like a 25-0, and I wanted to be in the 24s. But again, I was too afraid to risk pushing through that one really vital part of the track, which is, I'm guessing, is what there's turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. That 4 and 5, I'm guessing it would be, is a really crucial little section, and I just didn't have the confidence to do it consistently every lap. But look, it was enough to hold the podium, so I'm happy to finish there behind Seb and Mick.
Yeah, definitely enough. And like I said, congratulations on the podium, that 3rd place here at the Chicago Street Circuit. Before I let you go, is there anybody that you want to say hi to?
Yeah, thanks Mick for the setup this week. That definitely helped me get the result.
Awesome. Well, that was our 3rd place finisher, Ben Zoko, there in the number 7 machine. And that's going to do it here on the Global Sim Racing channel for this Chicago Street Circuit. Thanks to the team today, Joe and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, website, and merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. The next race for these cars is going to be at Sandown Saturday, January 7th at 8:30 a.m. Eastern, the same time as today. And be sure to check out all of our other broadcasts listed here. Up next later today is Camel Series at Indy, noon Eastern. And something I want to mention here before we sign off, Happy New Year's to everybody out there. We are counting down the hours until 2023, so Happy New Year's to everybody watching, and until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.